Hello, good evening everyone. Welcome to Lockdown Tuesday. This is Pastor Sky, hoping you guys had a wonderful week so far. Well, it's only Tuesday, but we're getting to the end of the month. Grab your coffees, your lattes. I'm not sure what this is. It's really thick, it's really sweet, and I don't really like it. But, I'll drink it a little bit. Wow, okay. So, get your bubble teas and your coffees ready. We're going to begin today's Lockdown Tuesday on the story of Esther. And today's title is The Courage to Die. There's oh, what a crazy story. Those of you who know this story will understand why it's called Courage to Die. But like we do every single week, we're going to take a look at a Bible story, and we're going to see how relevant it is to your life. We're going to make it fun, we're going to make it interesting, and we want to make sure that everyone here understands that this story of Esther is not just talking about her in the Bible, but it's talking about you in the internet world right now. So let's get into the story of Esther. Now, the story of Esther is a tale of two queens, okay? So in this situation, what happens is the king has a party. And it's not just any party. This party is 7 days, okay? So that's a wild party. 7 days of partying, and on the last day, what does he do? He calls his queen, because she's so beautiful, and he says, "Queen, come show yourself how beautiful you are to all the guests." At that time, Queen Vashti is her name. She says, "No, I'm not going." And what happens is she doesn't go. King gets furious. He's like, he's drunk and he's like, he's having too much fun. But he gets embarrassed in front of all of his friends and all these people who came to see him. So what happens next? Basically, she embarrasses the king in front of everyone. And then he says, "You are no longer the queen." And deposes her and banishes her. So what happens next? It's the search for a new queen. Now, back in those days, the king had a harem, like a bunch of concubines, plus on top of it, he had the queen. Now, what they suggested to the king is, make like some beauty pageant. And in this beauty pageant, find the most beautiful girls, and if you find a queen, you find a queen. And this is where Esther comes into the picture. So, Esther is this common girl. She's Jewish, she's from Israel, and she's nothing special. But they said she had a nice figure and she was beautiful. And what ends up happening is she not only wins and goes into the harem, but the king loves her so much, so smitten by her, he makes her queen. So now this common girl becomes queen of this Persian empire. Now, the next thing that happens is, in every story, there's always this wicked person, right? Every Disney movie you watch, it almost feels like a Disney movie, right? So this wicked person comes in, and there's a guy, his name is Haman. His name is Haman, okay? Evil, wicked, power-hungry Haman. Now, he became second in command. So it was king and then Haman. And because he's so power-hungry, what he did was, he made everyone bow down to him. That's how hungry he was for power. But it was Esther's uncle. Esther's uncle refused, and it's because of his religion. Because he believes in God, he doesn't bow down to any of the gods, so he doesn't bow down to Haman. Haman, furious. So he comes up with this plan, right? This plot. And what does he do? He actually plans to kill every single Jew. So what he does, he rolls a dice to see what day all the Jews are going to die. And it was like 10, 11 months later, but there was a day of reckoning where every Jew would die and all their possessions would be stolen. And the people in Persia were all allowed to just kill them and take their things. Now, when Esther's uncle hears about this, he's freaking out. But Esther hasn't heard anything yet. So what happens here is Esther's uncle goes to her and says, "Hey, did you hear what happened?" She's like, what do you mean? I have no idea what's happening. He's like, "Look, they're going to kill all of us." And she's like, "What? Are you kidding me? Is this real?" And he's like, "Yeah, what are you going to do?" And then he convinces her. The uncle says, "I believe you were put in this position for this very reason." Now, can you imagine this? Because you know what the next thing that happens is the realization is there's a huge dilemma. The realization is the rule at that time is if you go in front of the king uninvited, you could die. If you just come unannounced and wanting to meet the king, you can die. So, not just anyone can go in front of him. So she's like, hey, uncle, you know that if I go to him uninvited, I could die. And what's even crazier, I'm the queen, and he hasn't called me in 30 days. You want me to risk my life? And he says, yes. And she's like, okay, what do we got to do? 3 days. We got to fast, we got to pray, and then after the fast and prayer, I'm going to get my courage and put my life on the line, and I'm going to do it. And that's what happened. She comes before the king, uninvited. And the king, the king is sitting at his throne, all of a sudden, uninvited guest. So everyone's kind of like, oh, what is this? And it's the queen. And here's the thing that's kind of crazy. It's kind of a similar situation to Queen Vashti, right? The king wants you when he wants you. And when Queen Vashti didn't come when he called, she's gone. She was banished. Like, the king likes order. The king likes it when he wants you to be there, when he calls you. But he's kind of like, Esther's like, oh my gosh, this is really going to happen. I'm going to do the exact same mistake that Vashti made. She comes before the king. And what does she do? She's like, king, I need to talk to you. And the king looks at her in a loving way and says, I'll give you whatever you want, up to half my kingdom. So she was accepted. And then she says, hey, let's have a banquet. And what happened was she had these 2 banquets, and then she foiled the scheme of the power-hungry Haman. And then Haman died, and all the Jews were saved. And this was all because of one person. What did she do? She saved her people by risking her life. She had no idea whether he would accept her or not. She had no idea whether he would say, what are you doing? I picked you because you're nothing like Vashti. But instead, she was everything like Vashti. So she took that risk. She had the courage to die, and when she did it, she was able to save her people. Now, that's the story of Esther in a nutshell. And there's a lot of other different details in here, but we don't have to talk about that. Why? Because, this is a very shortened form, and we want to focus on what Esther's doing. Okay? So what are the lessons learned from here? How does she save her people? How does she get so much courage from such a common girl with nothing becoming the queen and then putting her life on the line for her people? How did that happen? Because you got to know how, she has one of the most courageous and brave, verses in the Bible. It's in Esther chapter 4, verse 16. You know what she says? She says, and if I perish, I perish. It sounds like this, it's kind of like a gladiator thing. It sounds like a guy with a sword would say, if I perish, I perish. It's like, this is something that you can never hear nowadays, because today, what would you perish? You'd be like, if I lose my job, I lose my job at McDonald's, right? It doesn't feel that good. But she's like, if I perish, I perish. One of the boldest and most bravest things. She says, if I perish, I perish. Let's do it. Let's go. And she becomes this valiant and amazing person. But how did it happen like this? And we're going to take a look at 3 stages of this story that is similar to your life. Let's take a look at Esther's life in 3 stages. The first stage, stage 1, is what you call the coming of age. Now, the one thing you have to know about Esther is this, is Esther chapter 2, verse 7 says what about her? It's very interesting. It says, Mordecai, which was her uncle, had taken her as his own daughter when her father and mother died, okay? So one thing you have to know, she was orphaned. Her parents both died. And you got to think about this. Her life before going to this beauty pageant to become queen, she didn't even know she'd becoming queen. But living as a common girl, a poor girl, what's her life like? It's not overjoyed. It's not super sad. It's just kind of living life, right? You come into the world and, it's kind of like us. And the reason why this is kind of like us is because those of you who are in university, those of you who are first getting your jobs or in jobs right now, what's similar is, yes, parents dying is symbolic of us growing independent from our parents. We grow independent from our parents, right? And honestly, when you're on campus, you actually don't want to be with your parents, right? You're kind of like, oh, mom, leave me alone. Do you want your mom dropping you off at school, or do you want your friend picking you up at your house and then going to school? You don't want your mom dropping you off in your university, right? You don't want to be living with your parents. You want to be independent. And what happens is, in life too, there's a time where you have to, not literally, but your parents die or their power over you dies, where you're no longer a child. You want to be independent. You want to live your life the way you want. When you first get to campus, when you're first on university campus, when you first start your work, your eyes are all wide, you're naive, you're excited, like, wow, I'm finally on my own. There's nothing great, but there's nothing sad. It's just new. It's exciting, right? Many of us, we look for this independence, and this is time of what you call a coming of age. We go to uni, go to work, but honestly, we really have no idea what we're doing. We just don't. And think about this, if you are on campus or you just graduated, even if you graduate with a business degree, you really have no idea what you want to do. You don't. You remember, I'm sure all of you who just graduated or remember that last year university, when it's scary. It's supposed to be exciting because you graduate and you get to go into the world, but you're actually scared and nervous because you don't know what to do. What career, what job? It's a coming of age. You begin to become independent. And that leads to the second stage. And the second stage is we get into the world, and what are we looking for? We're looking for opportunity. This is when opportunity comes. And for Esther at this time, what is happening? She is taken as one of the people into the king's beauty pageant to become a queen. That's opportunity. And you know what the crazy part is? If you look at Esther chapter 2, verse 15, she doesn't know what to do. Why? If you even look at the verse, Esther 2:15, it says, when the turn came for Esther, Esther's time to meet the king. Okay? She asked for nothing other than what Haggai, the king's eunuch, who was in charge of the harem, suggested. She had no idea what to do. She's like, oh, I'll do whatever you say. Oh, yeah, I'll do it. And what happens is, because she listened and because she learned, Esther won the favor of everyone who saw her. Why? She was a great listener. She listened and she learned, right? If you look at the situation, the reason why she was successful and the reason why a lot of us become successful when the opportunity comes to get a job, your first class, your first year in university. Do you know why? It's because we're so naive. We're so no knowledge in our hands of how to be independent. All we do is we follow exactly what to do, right? Remember your first year in university? You do everything. You go to class on time, right? You don't miss class. You don't think about skipping class. You do all your homework. And for the first 2 months, you're just really on top of it. When you get your first job, what happens? Same thing. You're never late. You always do your work. You don't fall asleep. You get excited to wake up in the morning, and you wake up an hour and a half early because you're excited to go to work. And you just listen and you do everything that's right. She wins because she listens and she learns. You see, in life too, whenever we begin anything, the very first thing we need to do is just like what Esther does, is you have to listen and learn. And that's at the starting of life, right? When we start something new, it's the listening and learning that becomes really important for us to become successful in that first stage of life. Those who listen and learn, what happens? Well, those who listen and learn are the ones that wake up early, that are not late, that that they wear the nice clothes. They make sure the laundry is all done. They don't go out late at night. They don't just hang out with their friends for no reason. They save their money. Why? Because they're listening and learning in the very beginning, and a lot of us do that in the beginning. And this is when it gets very interesting, because it leads to stage 3, and this is the last stage that I want to talk about today, which is the most important one, is the courage to die. This is when the stage 3 is a really important one, because it's do or die. It's basically, you're either going to go one way or the other. So what happened to Esther is, stage 3 is a time where she has to take control of her own life. She's confronted with a huge dilemma. It's not just a dilemma. This is death if it goes wrong. This is what you call life-changing decision. It could be, for us, you changing your job. For us, it could be breaking up with your boyfriend or girlfriend. For us, it could be changing friends because they're toxic. For us, it could be going back to school because you want to get a different job. For us, there's so many different things that are life-changing for us, things that we need courage to do. If you look at Esther chapter 4, verse 16, what does she do? Which is very, very interesting. The moment she hears what she has to do, in 4:16 it says, "Go gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. And when this is done, I'm going to go to the king." She didn't do things hastily, but she actually took a step back and she gave herself time to really focus and think about it, right? And the people who were her support group, The people who were the ones that loved her and the people that were her friends, they did it together with her. And she was the first, she did the smartest thing by far, is what? She took a step back and she clearly focused and thought about this big, life-changing, do-or-die decision. No one's telling her to do it. Everyone's saying, hey, you should do this. And the uncle's like, please, please. And she's like, give me 3 days. Give me 3 days. And she took that time to really focus. She took that time to really think about, what is this decision I'm going to make, that I'm going to make, that no one else is going to tell me. And you have to understand this too, that when we get to that point in life, also just like Esther, when you have to take control of your own life, one of the most interesting things you can't do is to get someone else to make your decision. Why? Because once it's not your decision, you have someone to blame. And it's so unfair, right? It's so unfair if you say, hey friend, what do you think? And then later you blame them. It's so unfair because they're not saying it as absolute. It's just an advice. It's an advice as a friend. But if you listen to them and you say, oh, I shouldn't have done what you said, then you've taken control still out of your hands. You have not become independent. You haven't taken control of your life. At this point, Esther is clearly understanding it is my choice. It has to be my choice. It is her decision. And you too, you have to understand too, when you get to these points in life, when you pass the coming of age, when you're bright-eyed, bug-eyed, you're like, wow, this is great. You're listening, you're learning, and then the opportunity comes and you're doing everything you're supposed to do. What happens is you have to know that the next step is it's clearly your decision. Because now you know how to do it. They taught you how to do the work. When you first got into the office for the first time in your job, what did you say? What do I do? Turn on the computer. Oh, okay. What do I do next? Put in the password. Oh, okay. You didn't know what to do. But now you know what to do. What happens? You have to realize it's clearly your decision and your choice. It's your life. It's your dreams, it's your visions. You can't let anyone else make that decision for you. And this is why Esther took 3 days. And it's not just 3 days of just like, and then Esther went back to the palace and she sat there eating her Cheetos and chips and coffee and cookies, just thinking about it to herself, what should I do? What should I do with my life? No, she fasted and she prayed, which means she was absolutely focused. She really thought about it. I know many times in my life, when it's a big decision, sometimes we don't think about it enough. And it's too big to think about, so you think about it for 10 minutes and then you just go off and do whatever you want. It's such a big decision. You can't do it that way. You can't let anyone else make the decision, and you have to take full responsibility for what you do next. The smartest thing is, she took time off and she focused on it, like really focused on this life-changing decision. She really thought about the full situation and not just herself. She thought about everything. Which means what? In the end, she understood and she realized it was time to take control of her own life. That is her decision. It's not anyone else. Right? For you too, it's the same thing. When we come to the situation like Esther, this doesn't mean I want everyone go out and change your jobs. Everyone go out and get a divorce and find a new wife or a husband. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is the most important thing is when you sit back and look at all the things that you're doing, you got to actually, in the end, think to yourself like, okay, I got to take control of my life. I got to make my own decisions, right? You can't let decisions be made for you. Why? How do you know if your decisions are being made for you? Is if you hit the snooze button every morning. If you don't wake up when you should. There's no control in your life. There's not. The people who are really in control, they don't care how much they slept, they get up. It doesn't matter. They take care of their bodies with the food they eat, the exercise, the decisions. Everything is made by themselves. And they realize at that moment, the control is in their hands. And that's why it's a powerful decision. That's why it's something it's so inspiring. Why? Because she made her decision. This last verse I'm going to show you today, right, is Philippians chapter 2, verse 3 and 4. And I'm going to tell you what a big person is. It says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of others. I'm going to ask you a big question for everyone here, okay? Who do you think is a big person? Think about that. Who's a big person, right? Someone who, lives only for themselves. They only care about themselves, right? So if someone's there, I'm not going to help them, and it's my money, and they treat everyone else poorly, and it's only about themselves. Or what about if it's like a soldier that dies for Malaysia, dies for Singapore, dies for Southeast Asia, dies for the world, right? Who do you actually think is a hero? Is the hero the person that thinks only about themselves? No, the greatest people are the ones that don't live for themselves. And that's why you look at them and say, that's amazing. That's why you look at soldiers who go to war and you say they're amazing. Why? Because they're not living for themselves. Who's the one that lives? Who do you think is great people? The greatest people in the world is not people living by themselves, right? And this is why you have to think about this. This last point I'm making to you is the very first point I made. I said it's a tale of two queens. It's a tale of two queens. Stage one, we're coming out of it. We're coming of age. Stage two, the opportunity comes. And then stage three is where we split ourselves into the tale of two queens. And you're either going to be Queen Vashti, and the moment he says come, you're like, no way, get out of here. Who's she thinking about? She's thinking only about herself. That's it. That's it. People who take the path of Queen Vashti are the ones who are wandering all the time. They get the good opportunities, but they can't keep it. They get better opportunities, something goes wrong. And Vashti, one thing that she was known for, she's supposed to be beautiful. And you know what? In life, you're going to see that in life, in the end, you're going to notice that beauty can only go so far. If you're handsome, it only goes so far. But in the end, it goes to character. In the end, it goes to who is taking control of their own life. The tale of two queens is you at this juncture in your life, right? For those of you who have faith, it's interesting. Because we get to this juncture, it's stage three, where you have to have the courage to die. What does it mean to die? Courage to die? Courage to die means to kill yourself, not suicide. Kill your own thoughts. The thoughts that say, go back to sleep. The thoughts that say, don't do what you're supposed to do. The thoughts that say, you should be listening and paying attention. You should be going to church. You should be going to school. You should be going to work earlier. You're supposed to kill those thoughts. People need the courage to die. And you're going to be in either one of two places. You're either going to be on the path of Vashti, where you're always wandering, being cut and wandering. You'll never pass stage three. Or you'll be on the stage of Queen Esther. And when the decision comes, she does not take it lightly. She takes a step back and she absolutely focuses and makes her decision. And she says, you know what, I'm going to get up. I'm going to get up. I'm going to work. I'm going to church. I'm going to pray. I'm going to do this. And this is a decision all of us here make, even when it comes to our faith in life. The last thing I want to tell you today is, have you been living a life of faith where you're just basically doing what everyone else tells you to do in faith? This is why it's boring, and this is why you don't grow. You just don't, because you just listen to what other people say. The people that grow are the ones that take control and say, I want to pray. I want to read the Word. I want to study. I want to do this. And these are the people that actually get to really experience God. So whether it's in faith or in life, this story is what story? This is your story. And it's very, very relevant to you. So I hope that all of you here really understood today's story of Esther. I hope it makes you think a little bit more deeply about what you want to do with your life, whether it's in faith, whether it's in work, whether it's in school, whether it's just in life in general. I'm grateful that all of you came today. I hope that everyone here, you're on the Lord's Love Church Facebook page. Please like it. And for those of you who want to see some more of the Lockdown Tuesdays or the Bubble Talks, we have a YouTube channel called Espresso with Sky. And just go to the link will be in the chat room. So you can just click there and subscribe there. And also click the bell. And the reason you need to click the bell is from next week, we are going live on both Facebook and YouTube. Both of these are going to go live, so you can connect on either one of these platforms. So if you click the bell on YouTube, then you're going to get an email being sent that it's going live, right? And it's going to inform you that it's starting right now, or the live stream is starting, and then the lecture is going to start in 10 minutes, right? So starting next week, next Tuesdays and Thursdays, we're going to have Lockdown Tuesdays and Bubble Talks. They're both going to be going live on YouTube and Facebook, so you can choose any one of those platforms. Also, another good news is, starting this week on Friday at 8 p.m., we're going to have small group Bible studies. Okay, so those of you who sign up today, there's going to be a little link also that you can sign up for Bible study. We're going to do small groups in groups of 12 or less. So there's limited space, 12 or less, and if we have to, we'll make a second group. That'll be this Friday and every Friday at 8 p.m., small group Bible studies for those of you who want to go deeper into the Word. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. it means that we're going to move into our question and answer. I'm going to give you guys about 5-6 seconds, and I'm going to have a sip of my coffee before we get into the question and answer. Okay, so let's begin the question and answer. We're going to start with Kylie, okay, from KL. Oh, KL from KL. Cool. It says, how do you make a life-changing decision on your own? It seems harder to think on my own, right? Harder to, Okay, so making these life-changing decisions, it is not an easy thing. And one thing you want to learn from Esther is she had a support group. She did. She really had a support group. Remember, when we looked at that one verse, it said that she told all the Jews in that area who's really pray and fast together for 3 days, which means there is a support group that she worked with. And for us too, it doesn't mean we have a whole village with us, right? But we have good friends, family, that you can tell them and say, hey, I'm really thinking about making a big change in my life, but if you can really pray for me or think about me, or I'd really appreciate over the next week. Right? So making life-changing decisions is not an easy thing. And because it's a life-changing decision, it's something that takes a lot of time. But get advice from people, but it's not the decision. Okay, that's the key part there is there's people you can get advice from, people you trust, like mentors and friends, and take all the things in. And from there, if those of you who have faith can pray about it. Those of you who don't have faith can meditate about it, really think about it, write stuff down. Who is it affecting if you change this, right? So like, let's pretend it's like someone who's got a family and wants to change jobs. The family's going to be affected. Got to talk to the family, talk to the husband, talk to the wife, and see what they think too, right? It's not a decision you make on your own. Remember, the big people are thinking about more people, thinking about the others, where the people who are considered the smallest are ones who only think about themselves and no one else, right? So get your support group and also get good advice about the full situation, and then with all your information, you want to sit down and say, I wonder what this is. Okay? Great question, Kaylee. Let's go to second one from PJ. This is also in Malaysia. It's Wendy Tan. And Wendy Tan says, how do you care for others more? I'm not sure if I can live for others. Okay, this is a great question, right? Because now we're talking about live for other people, and you're like, okay, but what if I can't, how do you can't just live for other people. Like, how do you care for other people that much more? And the thing you have to understand is, how do you start to like someone? Or how do you start to like others, even the people you don't even know? Because think about this. Someone who's like in the military is dying for their country, and most of the people in the country, you don't even know them, right? The thing you have to understand is you have to start to understand where joy comes from. And it does, that joy you have, I'm gonna talk about this joy that comes from yourself, the individual joy, and the joy that comes from others. And there's completely different. It's really crazy if you think about the difference between the joy between the two. And you have to realize how much more powerful joy from others is. Let me give you an example. When you accomplish something, you feel good about it, right? You do. You're like, wow, I'm so happy I graduated. Oh, you did a good job, Sky. Good job. And I get joy from it, right? But there's something crazy that people have to understand is there is a joy that is much more powerful than the joy you get from yourself, and that is the joy from others that you love. And you have to experience this to understand that the joy from others is so much bigger. Once you realize this, what happens? Once you realize this, you begin to grow your sphere of influence, or your sphere of relationships. It grows more and more the more and more you begin to understand the joy of others, which means that the best way to start learning how to like other people, or to learn from other people, is start giving and feel the joy. What kind of joy it is when you see other people you love become happy. I'll give you one example. Imagine this, and everyone can feel this. Some of you are mothers out there too. Imagine you have like a 3-4-year-old son, comes back from school, kindergarten, whatever it is, right? Preschool. and so happy. He's like, Mommy, Daddy, I drew you a picture. And they show you this picture, and it's like the ugliest picture you've ever seen. Why? Because he's like 4 years old, right? It's like, yeah. And you're like, ugh. But instead, you're like, oh, thank you so much. And you feel so much like, wow, thank you. My son gave this to me. So you're getting joy because he did something for you. So then what you do is you're like, okay, let me do something for you. So you take a magnet, you put it on the fridge, and boom, and you stick it on the fridge like, I want to see this every day. And then when you see your son look at you like this, oh, wow, and they're so happy that you put that picture on the fridge and you want to look at it every day, and you see so much joy in their face, what do you feel? You begin to experience the joy from making others happy. And you'll realize how much greater that joy is. This is why people are social, human beings are social animals. We need that relationship. And this is why the lockdown is a very difficult thing for a lot of people, because we lose that social interaction. Okay? So my thing for you is, how do you care for others more? Start by giving and experiencing what it's like to give, that feeling of joy you get from giving to others as a start. Okay? Mickey Tan. I'm not sure where you're from. Mickey Tan is from where? It sounds like Vietnam. Tan sounds like Vietnam, or it could be Chinese, right? So Mickey Tan, it says, can we balance the interest of ourselves and others at the same time? If you don't take care of yourself, how can you save others? Great thing. Okay. So what does it mean? When you say that you're thinking of others before you, that doesn't actually mean you neglect yourself, right? Because that would be a little bit extreme. Like thinking of others before you, like put it this way. Let's think about this. Let's look at the simplest example of eating together. Okay? If I think of others before myself, what happens is I give them the first portion and I allow them to eat. But does that mean I don't eat? And the answer is no, I just eat after them. But I'm showing, right, that these people I care about and I serve them first before myself. But it doesn't mean I don't eat, right? A lot of different things that we do, yeah, I'm showing that it's not that I care about you and I don't care about me. It's I care about you more than I care about me. This is how much I care. This is how much I want. This is how much I want to show you that I care for the people around me. And when people see these types of people, they're amazing. They're like, wow, where did this person come from? Always eating last. And an interesting thing is, there's actually a book, and it's called Leaders Always Eat Last. Leaders always eat last. They're always thinking about others first, and then they eat last, making sure everyone's taken care of. Does it say leaders never eat and everyone else does and he doesn't touch it? It doesn't say that. He makes sure everyone's taken care of, and then he also takes care of himself, right? It doesn't mean you don't take care of it at all, okay? I hope that makes sense. It's not about complete neglect. It's about thinking you're still in the same situation. Both of you are still going to eat, but you're learning to care for others above yourself, and you feed them first. Right? Because, have you ever seen that before where everyone's eating together and then, everyone hasn't got to the table yet, but someone just all of a sudden start putting stuff on their plate and they're start eating the food right away? You kind of look at like, man, you can't even wait for everyone. The feeling is, wow, they don't really care about anyone else. They just care about themselves, right? But we have to think to ourselves, of course, Mickey, I will say one thing is, there will come a time where you're absolutely desperate, where, you're dying. And it's very, very interesting because I give you two things to think about. Of course, in the time when you're about to die, that's the thing where you have to take care of yourself, obviously, right? But the thing that's kind of interesting when you look at human psychology, if someone dies for other people, they become a hero. It's like one of the things that you have to think about, and we could talk about this at another story for a Lockdown Tuesday. But the interesting thing is when someone, their morals, their moral code of how they live never changes, regardless of how low it gets and regardless of how high it gets, right? Because even on the high end, if you're so rich in this and you still give to people, then you're still like, wow, this person's amazing. The person who has, the word I want to bring up is the word integrity. Yeah, integrity is you don't change regardless. And these are the people that people respect the most. And when they respect people the most like this, these are the people that are inclined to be helped the most too. Okay? Let's go to Joanna. Joanna is also Malaysia, I'm guessing, maybe not. It says, how can we gain courage to do what we should do? It's not easy to sacrifice ourselves for others. And it's kind of the same as the other question there too. It's hard to sacrifice for other people, and that's why you have to start small, which means sacrificing little things like you eat before me. You go through the door before I go through the door. right? Here, I bought something for you. You eat first, and then I'll eat next. There's small things we learn to sacrifice first, right? You have to receive the joy of giving to other people. And when you have that joy, you're able to kind of grow the sphere of your heart bigger and bigger and bigger. So to gain courage, step by step, a little at a time. Right? All these people who are so super courageous, they don't do it in one shot. It's something that has grown over their lifetime, right? So for Joanna, I say the exact same thing to you is step by step, little by little, just start with the little things. I'll let you eat before I do. I serve you before I eat, right? All right, so start little by little and gain the courage step by step. Thank you very much, Joanna. Donna Velasquez, I'm figuring this is from the Philippines. When having a decision to explore and learn on your own and not including others, is that being selfish? And the answer is no. No. Why? Because not everyone is supposed to take the same path as you. If they're on the same path as you, it's a different thing. But not everyone takes the same path, and not everyone's at the same part of their journey as you either. And there are some things that you have to do on your own. It's kind of similar to what Esther did, right? Even though Esther got people to support her, she still went off on her own. And she prayed and she fasted on her own for something that was for her. So doing it on your own, that's not being selfish. It's when you exclude in all situations, right? Because there's a time for everything. There's a time to be alone. There's a time to do it together. Sometimes you make decisions together. Sometimes you have to do it by yourself. Sometimes you have to leave your parents out. Say, hey Mom, Dad, I got to do this on my own. And it's something that there are times you have to do it on your own. That's not selfish. It's just knowing your path that you're on. Okay? And not everyone's on the same path at the same place. Good question, Donna. Last question for today. From Casey in Singapore. Casey in Singapore says, how to ensure you are taking control of your life without mistake. And that is a mistake, right? The mistake is to think that you could take control of your life without mistake. And this comes to one of the things that especially, a lot of people just in general, we have the fear of failure. Right? We have the fear of going through oh my gosh, I screwed up. Why did I do this? And the thing you have to understand about this is, I talked about this in one of the lectures before in the Bubble Talks, maybe like 2 months ago, but you have to not be afraid of making mistakes. Mistakes are going to come no matter what. How to ensure you're taking control, which means that you consciously make the decision yourself and you take full responsibility. And what does it mean, full responsibility? Full responsibility means whether it's good or bad, whether you make mistakes or you're successful, both belong to you. And that's a responsible person. The worst thing it could be, a fully responsible person is not someone who only accepts what they did right and then neglects and says, no, I didn't do that wrong. Part of taking control of your life is also taking full responsibility of your mistakes too. And you have to realize, yeah, we're going to make mistakes along the way. Some will be big, some will be small. But as someone who takes control, you fully take responsibility for it, however big or small it is. That's taking control. Taking control is not doing it without mistake. Taking control is taking full responsibility regardless of what happens, but it was your decision that you consciously made and deliberately made yourself, okay? Great question, Casey. All right, and that's the last question today for today's Lockdown Tuesday. I hope that everyone had a wonderful time today. I had one. You guys had great questions. We'll see you again next week on the Lockdown Tuesday. Have a good week. Bye-bye.